In Psalm 17, we see a stark contrast between the men of this world and someone who knows and loves God. This is a Psalm of David, and in verse 13 of Psalm 17, David prays to the Lord, and he says, "Arise, O Lord, disappoint him, cast him down, deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword, from men which are thy hand, O Lord, from men of the world." And so David is praying for deliverance. And he asks God to arise to disappoint the enemy that's pursuing after David and oppressing David. He asks him to cast him down, and he prays that God would deliver his soul. And then he calls the wicked of the world two things that are really interesting. He says, "The wicked, which is thy sword," and then he calls them the men from men which are thy hand. God's sword and God's hand. And one of the things that we learn, and I think the sense of what David is saying here is that God controls the hearts of men, both those who love him and believe in him and those who do not. And so he raises up armies, sometimes to chastise his own people. We see this with the Assyrians and the northern tribes of Israel. We see this with the Babylonians and Judah. We see this with other groups that God stirs up in particular situations. And so for chastisement, we see that the wicked are actually the sword of God at times, and that they are his hand. They carry out his will on the earth, even when they don't know it or want to. And that's what's so amazing about the mighty power of God. But he goes on, and he says, "From men which are thy hand, O Lord, from men of the world." All right, so these men that he's talking about here, they are of this world. And he goes on to explain what they're like, which have their portion in this life. Whatever they get here. It's just like the rich man and Lazarus in Luke 16. And he tells the rich man, in your life you had your good things. Their portion is in this life, whose belly thou fillest with thy hid treasure. Their God is their belly. In other words, they have riches and wealth and lands and power in this life. They have the hid treasures of this world in this life. They are full of children, and they leave the rest of their substance to their babes. You see, that's the best that they can do, because they can't take it with them into the next life. And so the wicked, they send their wealth, they hand their wealth down. I just heard of a corporation that was 2 centuries old, that it had been in the same family. Just read about it the other day. Well, if these people don't know God, that's their portion, and it's only in this life. So they're men of the world. Their treasure is in this life. We contrast that with the next verse. David says, "As for me, I will behold thy face in righteousness. I shall be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness." You see, David is looking forward to the resurrection. He uses the term awake. In other words, whenever he dies, he's going to go to sleep, he's going to awake, and he's going to see the face of God. If we come to the New Testament in 1 John chapter 2, verse 28, he says, "And now, little children, abide in him," that's Jesus, "that when he shall appear, we may have confidence and not be ashamed before him at his coming. If we know that he is righteous, ye know that everyone that doeth righteousness is born of him. Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not." You see, David was talking about these men of the world. They don't know God. Their portion is in this life. They get their belly full here. They hand down their treasures to their children, but that's it. David said, "As for me, I'm going to be looking forward to what I see and who I see when I awake." He says, "Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is." That's David's hope. That's what David was looking forward to, was the resurrection. You can have your treasure in this life, or you can store it up from the next. I'm going to store it up for the next. I want to trust in Jesus. God bless you. I hope that you do too.